There's a common term that's being thrown around in Formula 1 at the moment, and that term is brain drain. Coincidentally, it's only being applied really to the three works teams of Mercedes, Ferrari and Alpine. Red Bull are being drawn into this as well. But what does brain drain mean? What context is it being applied with to Formula 1? And is there perhaps an even greater meaning that's been eating away at the sport for quite a while? When I first heard the term, probably 10 or 15 years ago now, God, I'm getting fucking old. It was a reference to a lot of highly qualified and newly graduated engineers and scientists in the UK being hired by companies overseas for high paying, highly rewarding and frankly much more challenging jobs that suited their skills. The UK wasn't doing enough to convince people of intelligence to stick around. I mean, think about it. Would you rather live in a concrete jungle on the outskirts of London with a salary that frankly insults your contribution, surrounded by crime and suffering from the repeated rising costs? Or would you prefer a detached house, a huge salary and a better quality of life in New Zealand? It didn't take much to convince my cousin of this. He was swept up quite quickly during this first wave of the brain drain. When we apply this to Formula 1, imagine each team is a different country and the engineers are the engineers. Okay, it doesn't take that much imagining. But the members of staff that are excelling within each team become highly coveted around the paddock, and the better that the team is performing, the more of a spotlight that these staff members are receiving. I mean, if we look at Red Bull for example, the teams have been chasing and making offers to the likes of Hannah Schmitz, Adrian Newey, even Christian Horner, and also beneath them, a lot of engineers and members of the race team and the strategists have already joined other teams. When the top teams poach from each other, the obvious reason to make the leap comes down to money, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit later. But when a member of Mercedes finds themselves accepting job offers at Williams or Aston Martin or even Alpine, a couple of years ago that was, there was the added challenge and the potential to be part of the team's growth. I believe that the cost cap has accelerated the level of departures from these top teams. The likes of Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari have a huge workforce in comparison to the other teams, and remember, employee salaries do come under the cost cap. At one point, Lewis Hamilton made the claim that there were 2,000 people at Mercedes that worked on the car in some way. If we assume an average salary of £45,000 per year, then that's 90 million a year on employee salaries. When you do the conversion, the cost cap currently is at around £120 million, so you can see how much gets eaten up by paying the staff. The solution? Well, as Christian Horner put it, redundancies had to be made for Red Bull. Members of the team that were important in the pre-cost cap era could no longer justify their costs to keep them. But of the staff that remained, pay rises stagnated and opening salaries were also being decreased. Suddenly, these big F1 teams were making redundancies of their highly capable staff and struggling to retain the staff that remained. For the likes of Mercedes, for some reason they cancelled their winter party as the team had apparently underperformed in 2023. And the winter party doesn't even come under the cost cap, so that's even less reason to stay. Meanwhile, the smaller teams that actually had the budget to spend right up to the cap began offering very attractive employment packages, and it's working. Slowly over the last few years, prominent members of staff have found themselves swimming down to the midfield for a new challenge and for better rewards all around. You might say that these lower to midfield teams are seeing a brain gain. And now, here's something that I haven't seen many people talking about, and it's an observation I've made from being somewhat of an insider. The brain drain isn't just about teams poaching from one another, but it's about people in general leaving the F1 industry altogether and finding homes elsewhere. For example, the likes of Bentley, Gordon Murray, ProDrive, they're all hiring and are very interesting projects that people with F1 experience can transfer their skills over to. Aerospace as well is an industry that ex-F1 staff are migrating to. It's understandable, the cost cap in F1 is inadvertently pushing out some very capable people into the welcoming arms of companies and industries that aren't inhibited by such a rule. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to work in Formula 1. There were brief periods of time where I wanted to work in the film industry, but my passion has always been Formula 1. As I grew older, I realised the money involved in Formula 1 could be astronomical as well, depending on how high up the ladder you climbed, and the perks were enormous as well. Red Bull would offer their staff free tickets to the races. The atmosphere at the team was always jovial, and you wouldn't believe it now, but there was a time where Christian Horner could be found in random departments just chatting casually to members of staff. To me, that was the perfect atmosphere for work. However, I was born a little bit too late, and by the time I did find my way into the industry, things had changed. I don't think the brain drain will stagnate until the grid as a whole kicks up a fuss about the pressures of losing staff, and that's going to take time. In the meantime though, we're going to continue to see the musical chairs continue. But who's going to end up ahead after the music stops? My bet is on either Ferrari or Aston Martin. The final swing of the pendulum could be which team is successful in poaching Adrian Newey from Red Bull.
Look at yourself.